Okay, beauties, we are back with Kyra, and this episode number 2, is going to be talking about caring about the details and honestly caring a little bit too much. So I think that we are constantly talking about aesthetics, treatments, best outcomes for our patients. People do need to find a person where they can constantly bounce different things off of. It's easy to just go with what you know versus seeking out something that could be even better.
You know what it is? I think it's the why. The why matters to us, and there are a lot of people in our industry, and I think it is changing in a really positive way, that it's shifting more toward like the medical aspect of aesthetics. But I think that the aesthetic aspect of aesthetics was kind of in charge at the beginning for a lot of people. And now we're shifting more toward the medical aspect of aesthetics being in charge. Well, and change is hard, right? I think that's the big part about it. Like, change is hard, evolving is difficult, and having somebody to even just bounce ideas off of when you're trying to come up with like a new way to do something is it's so helpful in that creative aspect of what we do. So I think you need that other person, because if it's just you, right, you already know what you know and what you don't know. And it's really hard to find reliable resources in our industry too. I mean, you have like NIH articles and things like that in terms of like safety, but in terms of the aesthetic aspect, everybody has a lot of gatekeeping involved. Understandably, like it to some degree. But yeah, there's so much where you're just like, oh, like there's not a great resource, with ear infection. You can look up on 20 different, apps or websites or whatever to like what the standard is, right? Where you're going to go like amoxicillin and then augmentin. But if you're looking at like, oh, if somebody has, like the weird tail and their eyebrow is pulling down, like, you don't have the same type of resources. You're like, okay, orbicularis oculi, thinking about like the muscle movement and trying to like figure out, where you're going to place like a neuromodulator to have the opposite effect than the actual muscle has, that kind of stuff. It's like, it's not as simple to produce exceptional results. Anyone can, to some degree, like inject, the same pattern on everyone's face and you get the same result, to a certain degree. But creating customized and exceptional results, it just takes more skill and more effort and more, at the beginning of practice, trial and error, right? Where there are certain things where it's like you see one provider do something one way, another do something another way. Everyone is very convinced that their way is the absolute way to do it. And there's a third and fourth and fifth way too. So that's the difficult thing in our industry, is the lack of standardization. So finding those people that inspire you to, consistently improve different processes, or realize that what you do is actually the best way to do something. I think that's the other thing too, because it's like you have people that are like, oh, no, only this way, is the best way. And I'm like, you don't like the result? I'm like, I don't like the way that looks.
Mm-hmm.
You spend thousands of dollars on a training to go to and go, oh no, I don't like that.
I think that happens more often than not.
But the pomp and circumstance is a whole different aspect of the industry, right? Like you have people that are really good at pomp and circumstance and might not be the best providers or the best injectors. We've had people that come to our office that I've never heard of before, sponsored by like Allergan or Galderma, and say they're some of the best injectors that I've ever met. And I'm like, they have no social media presence. You would never necessarily find them on your own. And so that's where I've been so, so grateful for those people, because I'm like, they've taught me things that I will take with me, forever as an injector, where you're just like, oh, you were hiding under a rock, like I would have never known to find you. So it's really good to have access to the industry and even just people, just to find the other people to, enhance your practice.
I hate calling it an industry. It's a specialty.
It is. It's its own machine.
But really the industry, honestly, as I've progressed in my injection journey and I've gone to different trainings and I've done the trainings with the people that have large followings, or I've done the Patreons and I've done those types of things, to an extent, some of the people are maybe more well known because they have a really great marketing team. Taking a step back and actually thinking about it, like, do I like that result? And trying to continue my education with anesthetics, I'm definitely being more selective with the trainings that I'm trying to go and do. But also, I feel like I am struggling with either, is it smoke and mirrors? Is it gatekeeping? Is it you have to come to my training because that's where you're going to learn like this newfound technique?
And they just gave it a really cool name, but it's like the same thing everyone's been doing for years. And I think that the other piece too is like, what's nice is even in a lot of, a lot of those like, don't love this whole like overview or don't love the whole product that they've produced or whole face, you might say, oh, you know what? Okay, I don't love, the cheeks. It's too much. But you might say that chin looks amazing. So, then it's like, okay, those are the pieces where it's like you can selectively pick and choose and kind of expand your ability that way. And I think that's much easier to do when you've been in the industry and you know what like realistically is possible with patients, and you know the anatomy, you know the tissue, you know how the products work and feel and push, versus being new in the industry and almost thinking like you have to take, every single piece of advice from the same person. And I think that that's one of those things like I never did that. I was always like, okay, I like your lips and your cheeks and your chin. And it's like you're taking things that you're learning from all these different people and you're kind of Frankensteining them into your own version of practice. And that is something that never lose the ability to realize when something that you've done may be better, or a system that you have in place may be better than someone else's, no matter how amazing and well known they are, or if they're sponsoring a conference or whatever else it is. Those are things where that takes a little bit of, I don't know, confidence to be able to say, oh, you know what? No, I like the way that I do this a little bit better. But it's difficult because you kind of go against everything where it's like, oh, well, they're headlining, the such and such conference or whatever. Like, am I sure that my technique is better? But you just have to look at the results. And there's also an aesthetic where some people may really like an over exaggerated, upper cheekbone or something like that. And that might be what patients are looking for too. So that's something where it's like your expectation, what you're creating has to also align with what patients really want. And that's where it's so important to be able to, pick and choose, and also know how to do, different versions of the same thing, right? Like not every person is going to need the same, procedure, same injectable in a specific area. You have to know how everything works, and you have to know what you're mimicking and what you're trying to produce, because every face is so different. So it's not like you're like, this is how I do a cheek. No, this is how I do this cheek. So it's not how I do every cheek, and I'm looking at it this way because I'm looking at, where we're lacking, maybe a little bit of anatomical projection. Where are you placing that product and why? What result are you trying to produce? Are you going to build everything in one day? Are you going to do it over multiple sessions? What product do you want to choose? All of those things go into, what we're building as providers. And so all of those things are not only, taught experiences, but learned experiences. So 100%, there's so much that goes into what we do and so much variability. And that's the hard thing about it, but that's what makes it so cool. There's so much autonomy. It's a newer field. Like you can do so many beautiful things. And that's the story that I have for you. Totally forgot. Okay, so let me tell you about something that happened to me last week. Because it's totally on topic right now. So my good friend who lives in another state, I get like a series of SOS texts, and she's texting, she's telling me about her roommate who got filler somewhere, in Colorado. And she's like, hey, like her chin's turning white, and she like saw the provider and she went back multiple times and she said it was fine. She spent all this money and she wants to, she's kind of miserable with her result, and she wants to have somebody's input to fix it. And she's kind of worried. And I was like, hold the phone. Like, what do you mean her chin's turning white? I'm like, I literally call her immediately. I was like, how many days ago did she get filler? Tell me everything. I'm like explaining capillary refill over the phone. So she's kind of going through it. Basically what had happened was she had a vascular occlusion. She had a literal vascular occlusion, and this provider had told her it was fine. Didn't try and treat even like medically, at all. Like no, didn't Hylenex it, hadn't even done like, the blood flow things. Like she didn't have Pronox or anything.
How long has the patient had the filler?
I would say realistically it was 2 days. Yeah, 100% vascular occlusion. Eventually convinced the provider, because I was like, this is an emergency. Like you either need to get back with her right away, have her dissolve it. If you're not confident in her ability and she's not confident in her ability to do that, or she doesn't have Hylenex or something else, so you need to start calling plastic surgery offices. I said they'll have call numbers, because Colorado, I'm like, ugh, I mean, you can try the emergency room, but I don't think that they'll have Hylenex on stock. Like we had it in LA, but that's different. Like Colorado, I don't know.
I still don't think people know what to do with that.
I don't think so either. And that's why I was like, they might give you like some Viagra or something to try and increase blood flow, or they'd give you a heat pack. This provider did nothing. None of this. No heat pack, no nothing. Like there was just no pep in her step. She said, I think it was something along the lines of, if it's not better in a day, then maybe we can try something. And I was like, it's already been 2 days. I was losing my mind for her over the phone.
How many times had she gone back to the provider if it's been like 2-ish days?
He had reached out to her via text first, and then she physically went back in. But I'm like, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that is a VO. This is an emergency. Like this is, and she's like, yeah, and she was in a ton of pain. Like she's really uncomfortable. I'm like, literally textbook vascular occlusion, blanching. Like she was starting to get like that little, like that peripheral pallor, like that little bit of like that reticular little looking tissue. Everything that I saw, I was like, oh my God, so many red flags. I'm like, you get there now. I was like, I was like, this is an emergency. So she had gotten it dissolved. And I'm like, okay, thank God. Then we had to assess the rest of the situation because the filler that had been placed other place.
Was she injected?
Her cheeks and her lips. And listen, like I know there's a lot of variability in certain areas. This girl is beautiful. This girl is gorgeous. Like anatomically, she's very beautiful. She's a gorgeous bone structure. So she found this person like randomly through a strip mall because it's like next to the nail salon where she gets her nails done. Like there's just so many red flags with certain things. She was running a special. It was like 3 syringes for like $1,500. And so she like convinced her to do more areas. So after the vascular occlusion situation, right, then I get the pictures of the other parts of the face. She was like, hey, this injector is telling me that, we need to add more to my cheeks to balance out like what's already there. I just don't like the filler because there's not enough in my face. And she goes, I'm just starting to get kind of suspicious and this just doesn't seem right. And she was like, I just want your opinion on it. And I was like, first thing out of my mouth, I said, that needs to get dissolved. I could tell where her cannula was. I said, did it feel like she was starting right here? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, because you can see the lines of filler.
In her cheeks? She was injecting that superficial?
Honestly, it was, I'll send you the picture after I just talked to her. I'll be like, hey, is it okay if because I already mentioned her to you. I was like, I should tell my friend. I said, I should tell my friend who has a podcast about it, because I said, she's just going to have a heart attack and keel over. I haven't seen something so visible where you can see the cannula track before. Truthfully, I've seen bad work, but it's one of those things where it's like you can see exactly where it was placed. I mean, and there was no fanning, just a bar. It looks like a bar under the skin. This was 2 weeks later, and she's like, yeah, she's telling me that I need to get more filler and buy more syringes and put more in to balance it out and do all of this stuff. And I was like, absolutely not.
Okay, in your opinion, did the girl even need filler in these areas?
She is someone that you could have probably taken a syringe and done a pretty little pop. You know what I mean? That little cheek pop, like that little down deep on bone, periosteal. There was like a touch of that little bit of youthful volume loss in a few areas, but you could have split. And that's rare, right? You could have split like a syringe. So yes, because it's like one of those things where you look at it and you go, it's not like this person didn't need anything, right? And nobody needs anything, right? But when she was talking about what she was feeling and what she went in for originally, like she has that perfect projection. She's very symmetrical. I mean, all of the things that you would look at and go, oh, wow, what a beautiful canvas. If someone wants something, but minimal anything is needed. So the red flag for me was like, before she even sent me the pictures, she's like, yeah, she's telling me I need to buy more and I'm just not happy with what I have. So I just feel like it's, a little bit off. So she sends me the pictures. Like I was like immediately like, nope, me, no filter. I was like, dissolve. That needs to be dissolved.
The people that do not know Kyra cannot lie. Sometimes you have these I want to call it like a knee-jerk reaction, but it's honest.
And it's one for her, I was literally like, you need to dissolve. I said, your natural underlying anatomy is so beautiful. I said, this is not, helping us in any way.
You took a baseline, beautiful person that probably didn't need very much at all, and now they've had everything.
That's where the backlash in the industry is coming from, because it's like that type of result that's being produced is what gives filler a bad name. And that is where I think my that knee-jerk reaction, that visceral, oh my gosh, nope, dissolve it, because it could be done well. It could be done well, and it was not. And there's no sense in, placing to try and blend poorly placed filler in. Now, it's something to be said if those patients have had filler, and it's been there for 10 or 15 years. I'm like, I don't even know what it's composed of. Do you want to risk doing that, or do you want to kind of blend the surrounding area in because they like the high profile cheek? There are other times where, I'm more sympathetic to some of those things. I'm like, this was done a couple weeks ago. We are in our window of opportunity. My first thought was, oh my God, were these things purchased from Temu? Because I was like, okay, did you get Ally points? Like, were they allocated? Did you see the containers? What did they look like? I'm praying. I was like, oh my God, hopefully it's hyaluronic acid based filler, right? Like, what if it's something else? And apparently, like, there's a question as to whether or not, like, they were expired, because I guess she, like, goes around telling the nail people that, like, she's working with expired product. Anyway, there's so many red flags to this thing. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, well, I'd rather have expired Voluma in my face than something purchased on the internet, right? But still, neither one of those are good options. So I talked to her and I said, listen, she wanted her money back and she was asking for advice on that. I said, let's fix the face first. I said, and then we can kind of address the other things. Cause I'm like, I'm not the business ended person of this. First comes your safety. Second comes the aspect of it. And like, now we're at step 2. So I said, listen, reach out. I said, she was like, I don't know if I trust her to dissolve it. I said, very fair. I said, Hyaluronic is kind of a point and shoot, to a degree, because she has nothing else in her face. So it's not like there's other good filler in there that we want to preserve. I said, you can, at least consider it if she's willing to do it for free. And I said that, you have other options as well. You could also see somebody else and have it dissolve, but the cost differential can be large. That was the limitation for her, right? Was the cost. So she reached out to her. This provider, I was blown away with her reaction. She was upset that she didn't like her work and, kind of politely just being a bit rude about it. She was refusing to, refund her even a syringe that was dissolved in her chin, like not redo it, not refund it, nothing. I'm like, but that's like a zero. You had to dissolve it because you caused an occlusion. There's nothing left in there. Not that you would want her to redo it, but at least try and make the situation right. Is asking her to sign an NDA immediately and all these other things, and telling her like she legally can't badmouth her online, and all of these horrific things that you hear about, but I haven't ever experienced firsthand in real life. And I literally am just responding to her going, oh my God, the number of red flags that we're getting. She doesn't feel comfortable dissolving the filler in her cheeks.
What? I am just most concerned about, there's so many people that have been turned off by what we do, but really have not experienced what we do.
The person who's providing that for you, like you said, the experience that they're providing, the products that they're using, all of these essential components that go into it. And that's where people in our industry always talk about that as the cost differential, right? For the training and the products and the time and all of those other pieces. 100%. Like, Groupon-based things are never good. And that's the thing in our industry too. I think a lot of people will rely on someone's title or, their the letters behind their name and think, oh, like this person's an MD or a DO, so I'm going to trust them implicitly with that stuff. I've seen some terrible MD injectors. I've also seen some terrible PA injectors and some terrible RN injectors. But I've also seen some amazing people where I'm like, the last 2 letters behind their name, they know anatomy better than anyone. They're phenomenal at what they do. They go above and beyond. They're so safe. Their aesthetic results are insanely beautiful. So don't be fooled by that either, because it's one of those things where I'm like, there's a false sense of security sometimes. And just because someone knows the anatomy, right? Like, there are like some dentists that are amazing injectors as well, but there are also dentists that took that 2-day class and they're like, I'm going to do, Botox now. And they just don't understand the aesthetic aspect of it. They have to be putting the time and energy and effort into becoming a better injector. And a lot of times it's like, no, I took that class, I'm certified in Botox. There's no Botox certification. That's a made up thing. That is a made up thing. You got a little certificate, yes, but there's not a certification in what we do.
The degree is like the bare minimum that you need. Doesn't matter what it is, because depending on the state you're in, you just need a license. Like you said, there's no certifications. It's like a false sense of security.
And even, MDs and DOs and PAs, it's not like you learn to deal with a vascular occlusion when you're, in school, right? All of these things are learned subsequently. It's not covered in any curriculum. Obviously plastics, I'm like, that's a totally different ballgame, but that's once you're in your specialty, you know what I mean? It's not covered by any broad curriculum.
When you do really good work, it does go under the radar. Like, people have no idea, which is great. So I think that's the double-edged sword of what we do. And we do care about the details and we do provide good results.
Best compliment when people think that your work is just exceptional skincare, right? Where people are just like, oh yeah, wow, your eyes look so much more open from that skincare. And you're like, yes, skincare. And it's one of those things where it's simultaneously the biggest compliment that you could possibly give someone, but also like it's a little sad where you're just like, yes, it's okay. Like, we'll keep your secrets. Like, I had patients in California that were literally like on stage, or, celebrities that are really like telling everyone like, love yourself, and like everything natural is amazing and all of that. And I'm like, oh, hyaluronic acid is natural. Botulism is natural. And like, those things are all true. But it's so hard because you have those people where you're just like, yep, that's okay. Like, I will let people can perpetuate that all they want. And as long as it looks natural enough that literally, like, I think that's the best compliment to us, honestly. That's the dark side of our industry. That's what gives, everything that we do a bad name. And so at the end of this whole thing, she ended up getting it dissolved by an amazing plastic surgeon. And I was like, listen, I'm like, the cost will probably be $1,500, like, just for the Hylenex alone, depending on how much he has to use, how many sessions you have to have. The guy literally was so sweet and felt so bad for everything that she had been through. He charged her cost for the Hylenex. And I was like, that is a provider. And he helped her restore some of that faith in medicine, right? And so between my and talking to her, and she was like, thank you so much for talking off a ledge. She's like, I'm just never going to get filler again. And I was like, no. It's like, don't let this deter you. Like, this is just, we're not ever going back there again. She's like, you're right. Like, I said, like, let me make it easier for you. I have a couple friends who work in Denver. I'm like, see them. I'm like, I trust them with my life. I was like, they will not steer you wrong. They're also very honest. And if it's something that they can't do or shouldn't do or won't do, they won't do it. And they'll tell you, and they'll explain it. After that, she goes, I'm really glad that we had this talk. And like, I'm really glad that we discussed it, because I is now not going to be put off of forever. But if you don't have that sounding board, or you don't have someone who, can explain some of that to you, you would be, you wouldn't want to frame maybe into any area of aesthetics forever. And that's really sad. And those are the providers that, like, again, I would just be sad that somebody didn't like, something that we did. I would be sad, but I would probably pay them back out of my own pocket. Like, I've never had that scenario, knock on wood, happen. But I'm like, if somebody was like that upset, I was like, oh my God, I would dissolve it. I would do all the things, and I would walk them through it. And then I've had patients where I've done Botox, and I'm like, oh, I don't love the result that we got from that. Like, I want a little bit more lift, or I feel like it's a little too frozen, or there's a little bit too much movement. You fine tune it and it's perfect. But everything that this person did, from like, criticizing her for not liking it, to trying to have her sign an NDA, and trying to do all of these other things and like push it under the table, it's not worth it, and this is not like she had Botox that she wasn't in love with, right? Like, this is a potentially life-threatening complication, and to get blown off during that is awful. It's unacceptable.
100% unacceptable. I mean, even you're like, I've never had that situation either, where it was like, I hate this, I need a refund.
You and I both it's like, we're kind of finding that the balance of that perfectionism, because I'll have patients where it's like, they'll want something that I don't want to do. It's like they want like a really over exaggerated, cheek or lip, always add. So if they want a lot more than I think that we need in an area, I'm like, let's do it my way first. Thankfully, I have not had someone go, oh yeah, I still want more. They're like, I like this. I really like that. They're like, and I've even gotten the ones that are like, thank you for not letting me do more. A lot of those times where it's just like, oh, I'm glad that like we did it this way. But I don't know, if that day comes, it's probably going to have to be with certain aesthetics, like the uber super overfilled, like gonna migrate Russian lip, or the crazy cat lady cheek, and things like that. If someone asks me to do that and they're not happy with like a more natural aesthetic in that zone, that's the hard thing, because I'm like, it's not necessarily a safety compromise. Some of the cheek, yes, that bone is just so small and so fragile, it's just going to end up, like sinking into their lower face and like into that mid cheek area, and it's going to look awful. That's an easier one to explain. But there are other things that I'm like, okay, we're not going to ruin your ups, because if we do them this way, they're going to migrate. You're going to hate them, but like, we can keep building them.
Yeah, that's where my honesty comes in. I'm like, I don't think I'm the person for you. Then I'll just be like, I don't think that we're a good fit, and that's okay.
I think that there's also if it's not going to look good, if it's not going to look good, but I also want to respect their autonomy as the patient, because it is their face, and I'm not the person that should be, dictating necessarily what they like. But if it comes into something like the Russian lip, they're going to end up getting migration, or like that super overdone lateral cheek, where I'm like, listen, that's going to end up migrating and ending up places that we don't want, and kind of falling into that mid face, or, falling forward and creating a less than desirable long-term goal, which most of those exaggerated things are, luckily. So there's an actual reason we can say no. If it comes to the point that there's something that like isn't necessarily going to do anything other than look bad, I don't know. Like, I think it's a delicate situation where I'm just like, okay, like I think not 100% of patients up until this point have just been grateful for the explanation of why we don't want to do something, you know? You would see them for other things, right? Like say they wanted to like, if they wanted to get that done, like, would you still see them for the rest of their face, even if they wanted to do like a super exaggerated cheek that somebody else provided for them? Or would you terminate that relationship or pause that relationship?
I think that there's so many confounding variables because my branding is like natural. I think that people walk in with the expectation that they're going to be natural. And I think that's like my demographic of patients that I do see. Like, I'm not going to tell them the standard of beauty that they would like to achieve, but I don't want to steer them wrong in the expectations that they're looking for and then what I can provide, if that makes sense.
100%. I mean, that's transparency. And I think you're really good at setting, you know, boundaries with things like that. And I think that I have a touch of the mom from Mean Girls where it's like, if you're going to drink, I'd rather have you do it in the house. We can do a bigger lip. Like I will give you that, like a little bit of a bigger lip, but I'm not going to push it beyond the point where I'm like, it's going to migrate. I should say like it's a bougier lip. It's not like an overdone lip. Like that's the difference.
I can vouch for her, guys. Her work, she does not do crazy things.
You know what? You have the structure that can support that. I think like slightly beyond natural, right? Where it's like they want that little bit of a bougier lip, but like we need to maintain shape. We need to maintain shape. We're not doing sausages. We're not doing sausage lips. Like that's my boundary.
Ugh, well, what's so irking is you see buzzwords being taken. I do full facial balancing, but then you look at their result and their result is their jawline is wider. They have huge, crazy lateral cheeks. Like they have so much chin shadow and chin filler that they've now widened them. Overall, a disservice to patients.
Or they've only done the projection points where it's like they've got a really projected cheek, they have a really projected chin, they have a really projected gonial, and there's nothing tying those zones of the face together. Like you did facial, you did not do balancing. And like you said, it's like that's the hard thing because the concept of things like facial balancing are so essential and they're so important. And it's really nice that some of that terminology exists so that patients can understand like, hey, filler and things like that can be very undetectable when you balance it very well. And so I love that introduction. But like you said, it can be very misleading because then providers are using those buzzwords to kind of trick people into thinking, and they themselves, I think, seem to think that if they're doing cheeks and chin and other projecting zones, that is in fact facial balancing. When, you know, we also need to tie the zones together. You could bring 8 different dishes to a Thanksgiving dinner, right? But if you got pizza and Hot Pockets and, you know, pad thai noodles, that's not a dinner. That's a potluck. A dinner it's cohesive. It works together. Dinner is facial balance.
For it to really be true facial balancing, in my opinion, it's not going to be a one treatment, one time.
We got to hit the muscles. We have to hit the fat. We have to hit the bone. We have to hit the skin. I mean, it's literally every single element and aspect of the face that needs to be addressed in order to produce a good result. And it is a time commitment and it is a financial commitment. And that's the hardest thing is producing the most natural results is more expensive. It's not necessarily less. It's typically more. And that's the hard thing. I mean, just as a patient too, where I'm just like, oh, I know I need to get my skin tight, right? Like I know I need to do it. But like, would it be so much easier for me to just throw filler in a couple areas? Sure. But is it not going to look as good? Yep. So like, I'm like, nope, we got to do that first. And then the skin integrity is better. And then you can layer on top of it. Now, can you also still get a little gonial before you go in and do your sessions of, you know, collagen boosting? Absolutely. Those are, you know, elements where it's like, you just have to be really cautious and make sure that if you're saying, hey, if we shift this tissue, you know, what is it going to look like? We have to predict the future in their eyes, essentially. And you have to understand like what you're doing, what the intervention is and what the possibility is and the spectrum of result, right? Like one person's going to respond crazy well to 5 to something. Somebody else might respond 60%. So you need to be aware of what if they respond 60? What if they respond 100?
100%. I'm going to end the episode here, and then our next episode with Kyra is going to be talking all about skin and skincare. So listen to that.